The last time the Church of England had a very vigorous discussion about women bishops, Cardinal Casper went to visit and reminded them that if they did this, it was going to set back ecumenical relations for decades. Some Anglicans in the Church of England may decide to go to Rome. I don't think very many will. The overture apparently has its deepest roots in repeated requests from schismatic groups that have left the Anglican tradition, left the Anglican communion. The traditional Episcopal Church, the traditional Anglican communion, groups like the Reformed Episcopal Church who left the Episcopal Church in the 1870s and 80s. They want to reconnect with Rome. But they don't want to give up everything about Anglicanism, which, many of those who cross the Tiber discover that life is not what they expected. It's much more authoritarian, it's much more directed vertically, and there are consequences for performance that don't exist in the same way in the Episcopal Church or the Anglican community.
You surely don't mean there's no accountability.
It's different.
The church.
It's different.
What's different?
Divorce, a remarriage after divorce is not permitted except through elaborate creative responses. Divorced people are not welcome at communion. They're excommunicated until that is redeemed or healed in some way. We don't today respond in the same way. We've changed our discipline about that issue. Abortion is treated in that way in the Roman tradition.
And how do we, I'm sort of going off that tangent rather on these, but how does the Episcopal Church justify the change? Is it new revelation? Is it new interpretation? How do we get there?
That's a wonderful question. Divorce is a good example. The Anglican community had vigorous conversations about remarriage after divorce, starting in the 20s, I think, at the Lambeth Conference, the gathering of bishops from around the community. And they said, oh, no, we can't do that. And then again in the 50s, they had another conversation and came to slightly different conclusions. And then we began to change the discipline. We began to say that, yes, it is possible to remarry after divorce, and you're not going to be excommunicated, forbidden communion, when you're in a divorced state, or if you remarry after divorce. Anglicans and Episcopalians usually pray themselves and practice themselves into a new place while they're doing the theological thinking.
We've noticed.
We deal with it much more incarnationally than theoretically. If you look at the difference between Roman Catholic canon law and Anglican canon law, it's telling. Roman Catholic canon law tries to spell out every particular. Anglican canon law tries to deal with big issues. And yes, may make law when it has to about particular things.
I'll let you off that topic. This question depends on, the deeper question depends on the answer to the first one. Have you seen the movie Avatar?
Not yet.
Have you seen movies?
I don't get much opportunity, except on long transoceanic flights.
And Avatar hasn't been there. So I'm sorry about the Avatar question. So here's another one, now for something completely different. How do you reconcile, given your background in science, what biology says about evolution, what Genesis teaches about creation? It is science.
They're both true. They're both true. Both Genesis stories are true. Two different ones that say quite different things about about creation, and the scientific story of creation, the cosmological story of creation. They talk about different things. The cosmological story talks about mechanism and process, and the Genesis stories talk about meaning. They're all true.
Sorry, my assistant here was. Have you heard? The American Episcopal Church is part of an international community. Indeed, the most robust growth in the church is occurring beyond American shores. What can be done to encourage or educate the American church with regard to its place in an international church?
Well, please stop referring to the national church.
Okay.
We're a multinational church. That's one place. Learn about some of our partner dioceses, some of our overseas dioceses. Are you all, is there anybody who's not part of the Diocese of Virginia? Okay. Where? Atlanta? Southern Virginia? South Carolina? North Carolina? New Jersey? Okay. Okay. Each of your... Maine, all right. Excellent. Each of your dioceses has connections with other parts of the world. Do you know what they are? Katie?
Dominican Republic.
Good. Belize. Botswana. Costa Rica. Sudan. Beginning to discover that and learning something about what it means to be an Anglican or an Episcopalian in that place begins to educate. And I think it forms compassion. It forms that gift of compassion within us. To understand what it's like to live in a place where there isn't running water, where people are subject to malaria, where healthcare is if you're lucky, a several-hour walk away. What it's like to read the Bible when we don't have one to read, when we hear the stories. Begin to learn about these things.
The Episcopal Church is generally associated with the upper middle class, or at least that's the perception. Do you see this changing, or is the perception correct?
The perception is a caricature that's no longer accurate. What's probably more accurate is that the average Episcopalian is 57. The Episcopal Church has for too long thought that parable about the field being ready for harvest said white for harvest. The growing parts of the Episcopal Church are not necessarily white, middle-aged, or older. They're unchurched. They're immigrant communities and communities of color, communities that speak other languages, communities where people don't know who Jesus is. The largest growing religious choice in this country is none of the above. It's unaffiliated, unaware often of the gifts that are offered in this church. The 4 dioceses in the Episcopal Church domestic that grew in the last year, both in baptized membership and in Sunday attendance, were North Dakota, Navajo Land, Wyoming, and Alabama. And almost all the ones overseas grew. Congregations grow that focus on the communities around them, not on the people only, on the people inside the building. We need the work of equipping the saints within the building, but it has to be directed outward. That's what engages people.
Well, related to that,